Greetings and salutations, and I am back with the One Talent Challenge, Necromancer, of course. And moving into Act 2, did I even do anything in Act 2 yet? Oops, I kind of need that. No, I have not. When they picked Skeleton to be my only talent, the Golem is granted to be my weapon. Uh, 2 to play Golem, 1 to raise Skeleton, so I have a bonus to the Skeleton. I'm going to see exactly how far I can get. I fear that, like you said, I think Duriel is going to be the big problem.
Not enough mana.
Is I think once I hit Duriel, he's just going to one-shot my skeletons. So they only have 157 life. They don't even have all that much defense either, come to think of it. I'm going to go in and get my mana back, and then I'm going to head down to the sewers. Because I have to kill Radaman. Now, the question then becomes, when I hit Nightmare, what talent am I going to use? Well, can't say when. If I hit Nightmare. Let me rephrase that. If I hit Nightmare. So if I don't make it, so he dies, and then I have to start over. Huh. And I have a secondary Necromancer. Question is what would I do with that? Watch me get like dim vision or something. Ugh. Then again, dim vision wouldn't be bad with skeletons. Because if you think about it, you cast dim vision, the enemy can't see you, but your skeletons can see them. So your skeletons just run up and zerg them down. Work. Like, I remember this place in Nightmare. You just walk in and just take a volley of the arrows to the dome, and you're dead. It's not necessarily the best thing in the world, but, you know, it is what it is. Oh, speaking of volley of arrows. One second. I'm going to mute the microphone so I can blow my nose. I figured people don't want to hear that. So, when it comes to, there was a thing that popped up. It was on Twitter today. It kind of made me laugh, but at the same time, it made me think how poorly a lot of things are going in terms of education wise. They put up a thing saying, you know, how somebody said they were hating on the fact that archers in a medieval movie are told to fire, and then they release their arrows. And they said that was before firearms existed, so why would they say fire? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because burning arrows did exist. I mean, they used to light their arrows on fire and then shoot them. It's not like they would always say, like, loose arrows. Or release. I mean, I don't know what they said, but, you know, fire arrows did exist. Were widely used, especially when there was pitch involved. I mean, pitch was a common defensive thing. They would take oil and pitch and throw it off a rooftop in a cauldron. And then they'd have a guy up there with a flaming arrow shoot down at him and ignite siege machinery and everything around him. So fire existed, so calling it fire kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, you don't have to have an arrow on fire every time to say fire. Nevertheless, they were nitpicking about it, and I'm like, yeah, because, you know, flaming arrows never existed at all, ever. I don't know. I think I have a problem with that. Like, I get what they're saying, but when people make a claim like that and it's completely idiotic, it drives me nuts. Like, I get they're trying to question the norm of what did they actually say. Well, they probably did say release or shoot, but they probably also did say fire. No. Never will know, but I'm assuming they would have said. Nevertheless, there's also there was also this other topic that came up, and they're talking about there was the whole payment processor thing, right? Well, it's gone further. Now payment processors are eyeballing targeting other games like Grand Theft Auto and regular games, more than just the adult genre. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, of course they did. And of course they're going to. It makes sense. Think about it, right? The payment processors are doing this because it's a backlash for the Chuda meme, Just sit there and don't do anything. Nothing happens, You know the Chuda meme. It's Chud Buddha. And if you don't know the Chuda meme, all you have to do is just look up like Chud Buddha. And it's basically the game, and that was brought about as backlash. The Chuda meme was brought out as backlash for all of the DEI and all of the other stuff they've been putting in games and making games more about pushing a political message and less about actual gameplay, and which came about as a backlash for the fact that it basically all boils down to Gamergate, right? The first Gamergate that happened, there is discrepancy amongst a bunch of people. Some people say, well, Gamergate never actually really occurred. Other people say it did. There were people at the function that said, no, the harassment never occurred. There were people at the function that said the harassment did occur. I don't care. 6 of one, half dozen of the other is not germane to the situation. Regardless, the Gamergate debacle, the backlash was all of these people went and got into developing, all got their certificates, got a, their, not their certificates, what's this how the degree in developing, and then started making games and started joining game industry. And so they started making games to push political messages. A coordinated pushback to the Gamergate debacle. And then the Chuda meme came out as a coordinated pushback against the coordinated pushback. And now the payment processors are a coordinated pushback by, I believe it's called Collective Shout. It's a coordinated pushback to the coordinated pushback to the coordinated pushback. And it's like, folks, there's a way around this. All right? There's a way around this. And it's a simple step. Every single video game place does not have to delist these games. You put the game up for sale, and you sell a digital currency. The payment processor can't tell you no on a digital currency. Because it's a digital currency. Can it be used elsewhere? Sure. You could use, let's say, like I said in the other video, for Steam, call it PSI. Call it PSI, pounds per square inch. So you could use Steam PSI to order a pizza or buy your groceries, right? Or you could use it to buy a video game. They can't stop you from using it wherever you want to use it. Not allowed. That's all you have to do. You just take out the middleman. Well, not even take out the middleman. You add a middleman. You create a digital currency, kind of like V-Bucks for Fortnite, right? It's no different than that. Like, imagine if Fortnite got removed from payment processors and they said, oh, you can no longer purchase these in-game skins with your Visa or MasterCard. They would just buy V-Bucks and then say, okay, well, I'll just use my V-Bucks then. And the payment processors would be like, well, we can't stop you there. Same difference. And that's all they need to do. Or just make a payment option in cryptocurrencies. As much as I can't stand crypto. I can't. Because I don't trust it. I don't trust crypto as far as I can throw it. I told my brother the same thing. And he just kind of looked at me like, well, crypto's safe, and he was going on and on and on about it. And I said, you can sit there and say crypto's safe, but I was like, dude, I'm sorry. I said, if it's on the internet, it can be compromised. That's just the law of the jungle. It's on the internet. It can be compromised. He said, no, it can't. It's on the blockchain. Well, guess who ended up being right? A few months later, after I said that, the first ever blockchain hack had occurred. You can probably look it up. As a matter of fact, I will look it up right now. Did the blockchain ever did? Pretty sure it did. Once hailed as unhackable, blockchains are now getting hacks. Wow. So, yes, indeed. Like I said, if it's on the internet, it can be compromised, including the blockchain. This is why it doesn't work. This is why I don't trust crypto, because, it can, like I said, it can be compromised. Not only that, it can be artificially inflated and deflated. It can be, the system can be rigged as much as the stock market is. Right? The stock market's rigged through other means, obviously. Stock market's rigged through insider trading, people buying and selling futures and other things like that. And they can just game the system. Now, other people have learned how to game the system with the whole shorting of GameStop and that kind of thing. But yes, the stock market can be gamed, but crypto can be gamed too. Proof of that, oddly enough, was Elon Musk. Elon Musk, a while ago, had mentioned something about crypto and then said something along the lines about the Dogecoin. And that was ages ago. I mean, this was quite some time ago. A few years ago, actually. And what happened? Price of Dogecoin skyrocketed. All because he mentioned it. Okay. Who does that benefit? Well, it benefits whoever has the coin. If you like, let's say you're not holding the coin and someone else is. Okay. Someone else is holding Dogecoin. And now you want to buy it, but you can't because you're not the one holding it. Did you say it froze? Put that skill point in. And that's the thing is it can be compromised in such a way, and of course people didn't like it. When I say that, because they think, well, it's uncompromisable. No, it's compromisable. It can be gamed. It can be artificially inflated just through a known celebrity saying a tweet or a known celebrity endorsing. And when you can artificially manipulate a cryptocurrency by means of sending out a simple tweet, you've now gone to the point where you've got a problem. Why did I keep that? I don't know why I kept that. Oh, right, because it sells for more. That's right. Sold for more than 5,000. That's why I kept the money aspect. And that's the thing, is like you sit there and you realize that, if it can be altered or if it can be compromised, you're going to have a group of people that's going to seek to compromise it for their own personal gain. It's typical human nature. People are out to people are out to put themselves first. And people are out there, they're out there to put themselves on a pedestal, so to speak, put their best foot forward. It happens a lot, more than you think, and they think nothing of sabotaging others to do so. So anything that can be manipulated is a bad idea. But in this case, using crypto or some form of digital currency as an intermediary between payment processors and Steam or EA or whatever will be the best answer they could come up with. Solely because without it, you are going to have a scorched earth policy of games. And this is all because of a bunch of people down in Australia got upset at some games that were made. Okay, I'm upset at games that are made all the time. because they're dumpster, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm going to create a massive political movement and make a lot of noise just so I can have my way. What you're going to have, and it's long overdue, just so you know. This is not me being like a doomsayer saying the sky is falling. No, not at all. This is me saying, realistically, 1 foot rooted in reality, this is long overdue. The video game industry has been resting on its laurels for far too long. They've taken far too many liberties and taken advantage of people that took it for granted. I mean, it's the truth. Back in the 80s, back in the 90s, yeah, they made bad games. It took forever for us to get information about bad games because, well, every month you'd see it in like Nintendo Power or Video Game Magazine, PSM Magazine, like PlayStation Magazine. So you'd see it there, and you would pick up those on, pick up the PlayStation Magazine or whatever on the shelf, read it, and be like, game's dumpster, I'm not going to buy it. But it took forever. And the video game reviewers back then were, I would say, slightly more objective than they are today. The ones today are very subjective. They sit there and they're like, it sends a positive message, blah, blah, blah. They don't care about how the game plays. They don't care about how crisp the controls are. They don't care about how fluid it is, how engaging it is, how immersive it is. If the controls are ingenious, they don't care. None of that matters. They don't talk about it. And those are the hardcore things about a game that you want to know. You want to know, is the game going to play well? Is it going to feel good to play? Like, if I press a button, like for this Necromancer, for example, right? Yes, I'm summoning skeletons. Does it feel good to play to run in and let my let my minions do all the killing? No, not exactly, but I know that it's what I have to do. That's how this archetype is played. And doing it with one talent makes it more fun. It allows me to have to think about my positioning more often. That's what makes it fun. The challenge makes it fun. And the threat of it being hardcore and me dying makes it more engaging for me. So having that sort of information in a game when it gets made and brought out, that's the information people need to know to make the best educated purchase make an educated purchase as best as possible. And most video game reviewers and journalists don't even try. They really don't. They care more about the message than the messenger. And that's a terrible way to do it. Back in the day, it was about the messenger. It was about, is the game good? And then they would go into it, music, sound, graphics, the works. And they would give a mostly objective rating. They would talk about how there is some performance loss, and it's like, well, it's on a console, brother. I mean, come on. It's got limitations. I mean, even PCs had limitations back then. Even though I was told I was wrong, and somebody said I was a fraud. And I said, yeah, because, I've only been using PCs ever since we had a Commodore 64. Yeah. I've been using PCs for a very long time. And then you turn around and you get an 8088. If anybody knows what an 8088 is, good job. You're as old as I am. Now, I said, when you grew up the way I did, and you got a game and you thought it could run on your PC, but it couldn't because it doesn't have enough power, yes, there was frame rate issues. But if you were playing above 20 frames a second, you were considered God tier. That's how old I am. People were talking about how certain games are locked 30 frames, and they were mentioning, like, Nintendo 64, and I'm like, I'm talking about stuff that existed during the Super Nintendo. I'm talking about stuff that existed when the internet first came out and you had to have dial-up internet. I'm talking about when low ping bandwidth was deemed a hazard versus high ping bandwidth. You as a high ping bandwidth player, let me tell you this right now. I played Quake 3 Arena way back when it first came out. Way back when internet just was starting up. 56K connection, we were at 48K, 48 kilobits a second, transmitting data, right? I'm a high ping bandwidth player. The guy that's got cable internet, which was reserved for the inner city people that had a lot of money, he's not having any lag. I'm lagging all over the place. But because he's not having lag, my hit detection's better because I'm shooting where he is, and he is there because his connection's better. Whereas he's shooting where I am, but because I'm lagging, I'm not there. I'm actually somewhere else. So low ping bandwidth was actually a benefit back then. But we were playing games on PCs that shouldn't have run it. And we've been doing that for years. Knowing this, they called me a fraud. They said, "Oh, you're such a fraud and a fake," blah blah blah. And I said, "Yeah, because PCs didn't always have amazing specs. There was times when you didn't have the money to buy upgrades, or that there were upgrades to be bought. Because back then, upgrading a PC was you threw yours out, you bought a new one. It wasn't, oh, you go out and buy a part, especially where I live. That wasn't go out and buy a part. It's go to a big box store, buy a brand new PC. There's your new PC. Nowadays, it's so much easier to build a gaming rig than anything else. But I digress. They used to be mostly objective back in the day about how a game played. And I say mostly objective because they obviously put in their subjective opinion about, like I said, performance and other things like that, which to me detracts from somebody giving an honest opinion of a game. Like if somebody's going to tell me about a game, tell me it's boring to play after the first few fights. Tell me it's this, that, and the other thing. Like, be 100% honest how it feels to play it. Like, from what I can see in the Battlefield, like Battlefield 6, for example, I've seen some people play it. I've seen some montages of people playing it. It looks like it's going to be almost a Call of Duty clone, to the degree that you can bunny hop and dive and omnidirectional sprint, that kind of thing. Nothing big there. I don't have a problem with a mechanic that's new and ingenuitive being reused. I really don't have a problem. But what I didn't notice is nobody talked about how crisp the gameplay was. And that's something that I'm going to do when I sit down to it and I start playing it. I'm going to see how the gunplay feels. I'm going to see how crisp the hit detection is. That's the stuff I care about. And if video game companies started focusing more on that, the meat of the potato, you wouldn't have the problems you have today in modern gaming. And the problems you're having in modern gaming is nothing new. Like I said, it's long overdue for a collapse. The last video game collapse was the same reason. Oversaturated market. And when the market got oversaturated, what happened? The gaming community was like, what's a good game, what's a bad game? There was no review system. So people were buying bad games and they got burned on it. So they got rid of the games. And that was back during the Atari days. Matter of fact, E.T. was like the soul crusher. E.T. was the straw that broke the camel's back, to use an old phrase. Because it really was. This is why they buried, hundreds of copies out in the desert Southwest. And then denied that they buried hundreds of copies in the desert Southwest. Until somebody went out and found that they buried hundreds of copies in the desert Southwest. And it's like, look, you guys wanted to bury the turd, quite literally. You should have just owned up to it and said, yep, we buried the turd. I get it. right? Like anybody that has been a video game player would get it. They'd understand. We're in that same era. Nowadays, you have information that says, well, this game's trash, that game's good. But then you have a lot of people that are paid hype figures. And they'll hype a game up. Starfield, for example, was being hyped to the moon. And then when they found out that it wasn't as good as everyone thought, kind of came crashing down on them. So beware of the hype. I guess would be my only bit of advice there. But we're long overdue for the same similar type of crash. This time it's going to come through payment processors and people just shutting down gaming as a whole. Because everybody's blaming everything on gaming. Acts of violence in America, video games are the response. Despite the fact that many psychological studies found out that video game playing actually helps people manage anger better than if they didn't have it. The actual statistical studies showed that those that played video games were less likely to resort to violence than those that did not. And they say, well, video gaming is ruining marriages. No, there's a lot of things that are ruining marriages. Polyamory, infidelity, long working hours, two parents working, people getting into a relationship and not realizing that the actuality of a relationship is to have a family and enjoy the family unit as a family unit. To sit down with your family and enjoy the time shared. People are losing that. People are losing that purpose, that sense of purpose. And they're blaming video games for it. And it's not. There's a lot of other factors that are the leading factor as to why their relationships are falling apart. And I don't want to go too far off into the weeds about, the 3 pillars of validation and how to make every single relationship work. I mean, it truly would. I'll give a cursory overview. Okay? I'm not gonna go in depth into it. There are 3 pillars of validation: physical, emotional, and psychological. The physical validation is not necessarily bedroom related. It just means physically being there for them, physically being present in their life, putting your arm around them, letting them know you care, that kind of thing. So that physical, that's what that means. Psychological means that they're heard and understood, and you comprehend it. And emotional is that they're heard and understood. Psychological is that they are validated. They feel validated psychologically. Like you actually are validating their existence, validating what they do, taking interest in what they take interest in, even if you don't enjoy it. You enjoy being around them and you enjoy hearing their stories about it. Right? That's psychological validation. If you have all 3 of those pillars maintained and you're doing it proper, you'll never have to worry. Never. Because you're there, you're present, you're taking care of them, you're supporting by means of money, which is physical validation. You're listening, you're paying attention to what they do, you're being present in the moment, you're enjoying spending time with them, and you are partaking in things that they enjoy because you enjoy being around them and you enjoy watching them happy. That's literally all it takes. And people today cannot manage that. Once you have one pillar fall, you can repair the pillars of validation. You can. You could just go out there and repair the pillars of validation. Say, you know what? I'm going to make a concerted effort. You have to understand their love language, of course, because for each person, their love language is different. When you actually do that and you repair the pillars, you're fine. You don't have to worry about anything. Your life will be peachy keen. If you don't, once you have the first pillar fall, that starts arguments. That starts conflict. You start getting that, oh, well, you said this. Oh, well, you said that. Well, this happened. Well, that happened. Don't play a blame game. Realize that the pillars fallen. Fix it. Right? Once you have 2 pillars drop, seeking behavior begins. That seeking behavior is the downfall. You can still backtrack and fix it, but you have to pay attention. And that's why you have problems. Because people don't understand the pillars of validation. And then you have other problems, especially in this nation, where people say, well, we no longer have the gender roles. Okay, fine. You don't want the gender roles. Fine and dandy. Go out there and ask how many women want a stay-at-home dad. None. None of them do. Okay, so if they don't want a stay-at-home dad, how's that not having a freedom of gender roles? Obviously, you're going to have people in the comments saying, oh, but I don't mind it. No, you do. Because if that was the case, you wouldn't have a problem with, like, hardly any of these guys that are out there. But yet they have problems with all these guys. And then it's been done to death. There's so many topics on, like, the male loneliness epidemic. And it's not that men are lonely. It's not. We're not lonely at all. Aren't. And people say, well, they don't have that companionship. No, we don't. Because every space we've ever had that's been a dedicated male-only space has been invaded by everyone else because it's deemed misogynistic if it's not. That's just the truth. We used to have barbershops and speakeasies. All barbershops are pretty much gone by the wayside, and now, due to equal opportunity employment, you must have at least one female employee, and you must be able to style hair as well as be a barber. So that's gone. You can't have speakeasies anymore. You can't really have any place without it being deemed some sort of affront to mankind by catering to having guys get together and actually talk about things that guys care about. Right? Whether it be a pensive moment that a man is having and thinking about his life in a different lens, doesn't matter. There's no place to do it. None. It's all been taken away. But there's plenty of women-only spaces. Plenty of those. They don't use those. Because that would make too much sense. See? If you try to invade in their spaces, or try to listen in on their conversations in those spaces, you're the bad guy. People say, well, you're just being woman-hating. No, I'm not. I'm being realistic. Now, this may not be the case for every single individual. This may not be the case for every single human being. There may be people out there that don't have this problem. They may live in an area where that problem does not exist. They may live in an area where they may live in a certain, I don't know. They may live somewhere with an old school mentality. It doesn't really matter. I'm saying that it is a pernicious thing that does exist. And having a place where people can speak their mind without fear of judgment, without fear of reprisal, without fear of being labeled, it's a nice thing to have. Men used to have that. But you can't even have hobbies anymore without having to read everybody into the hobby. Read everyone around you into the hobby and say, well, this is my hobby. This is where I have to go to do that hobby, etc. and so forth. And like I said, it's not an exclusive issue. Other people might have this issue. Other people might have this problem. some people might not have the problem at all. I'm saying in my experience, it has been that way lately, like the past decade. When I was a kid, you had you had places where it's like you and the boys would go and sit down and have a chat. That's all it was. It was just you and the guys talking about whatever sport they were watching or hunting around in the autumn season or fishing in the spring. And they were just talking. And they wouldn't talk about their home life at all. They would just go and have a social outlet and unwind. And that fixed the loneliness. Nowadays, guys don't want to do that. No, because they're going to get labeled. You're going to be seen as weak. It's true that's been happening all over the place too. Guys get labeled as weak because they're not doing things that other people deem manly. Okay. So riddle me this, Batman. What was deemed manly back in the era of the Greeks and the Ptolemaic Empire? Was it Ptolemaic? What was deemed manly back then? Any idea? I know. These people were sought after and revered. The old Greek empires, the Trojans, stuff like that. Those days. They'll probably never guess it. If you do, I'll be surprised. Philosophy. Philosophical minds of the Greek philosophers of all shapes and sizes were seen as very prized individuals. They saw that as manly. Politics were seen as manly back then. Because politics back then wasn't like politics today. Politics back then was a substantial discussion about things that needed to be changed in the empire, and it affected everybody's lives. Politics today is what pork politics they're going to push through in a bill. Doesn't really affect anybody's everyday life. Truthfully, it doesn't. So, what do? They brought out gladiatorial combat. Then what was seen as manly? Wasn't the philosophers. And from the point of gladiatorial combat onward, there was a war on intellect. Even to this very day. And of course, I've had people say, there's not a war on intellect. Look at the show Big Bang Theory. It's a comedy, and it's a hit comedy. Blah, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, yeah, they're making fun of people being intelligent. Because surely no one speaks like that. Surely no one's eloquent enough to sit there and succinctly put something in such a way that only those with a high intellect can understand. Gone are the days of Dennis Miller, who was a very verbose individual. His vernacular was higher than even my own. I understood what he was saying, but I could never remember all the words. But I totally understood everything he was saying. Not once did it go over my head. Not once did I sit there and go, I don't know what he's talking about. Trust me. Like, when he would use a word, I knew the word. I didn't have to look it up. And he used it in the proper context. But it's to that point nowadays where that's now seen as pathetic. If you're an intellectual, if you are slightly esoteric, if you are a bit of an oddball like myself, they don't want to talk to you. They push you aside, you're creepy. And then they wonder why they're never approached. Well, look, I'm not an idiot. I'm not a dull man. I'm not dense upstairs. I understand a lot. One thing I understand is human nature. I understand that very well. What I've found is if I walk up to somebody and I can tell by their general uh, body language that they don't even want to see my existence darken the doorstep of the building, why would I try to talk to them? I would just hedge my bets and say it's not worth doing. They say, well, you never know unless you try. No, I already know before I try. It's a key difference. Because I can look across the room and tell if someone's interested in me. And I don't mean interested in such a degree that they find me supremely appealing. I'm saying interested in even just a discussion. Chances are they're going to look right over me or through me, one or the other. Because I've been hit in Walmart with shopping carts. True story. I'm 6 foot tall. I don't know. I'm down to like 280 pounds, 270 something. I don't know. I don't know what I weigh. I haven't weighed myself in a while. I've been doing keto carnivore and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I'm losing weight. Then I'm down in weight, but I used to be over 300 pounds. 6 foot tall, 300 pounds, in the middle of an aisle in Walmart, and I get hit with a shopping cart. Now, this lady was not on her phone. She didn't have glasses. She wasn't old. She wasn't distracted with kids. She was shopping alone, and she was not looking up at the shelves. And she ran right into me. And then she looked up from, like, it's almost like she was not present at the wheel. She looked up, she goes, I didn't even see you there. And I'm like, how could you not? I literally take up half the aisle. And it wasn't an isolated incident. It happened like 4 times that day. All different people. And they all said the same thing. Men, women, didn't matter. They all said the same thing. I didn't even see you there. It was at that point that I realized I'm invisible. Man my size, invisible. Would you believe it? Nevertheless, I could tell generally by looking at people whether or not they're keen for a discussion. Oftentimes they're not. Because they'll talk about things I don't care about. Or they'll talk about things that I don't pay any attention to. Modern music, for example. I haven't found any single piece of modern music, at least here in the States, that's worth a squirrel fart. That's just my take on it. As such, I don't really pay much attention to modern music. I don't pay much attention to much music at all. And people don't like that. Just people don't like that because, well, it's music. It brings people together. Yeah, unless the music sucks. Then it brings people together that enjoy it, but I don't enjoy it. I think it sucks. I go, well, have you heard it? Yes, I have. Like, for example, today on Twitter, I'm going to be ending the video here shortly. Like today here, like today on Twitter, somebody said, it was posted. It was this thing. It's like, if somebody paid you $10 million to never listen to another Taylor Swift song, could you do it? And I sat there and I said, I'd already made the 10 million. I don't listen to her anyway. And they're like, and it's like, people are like, what do you mean? I don't even know what her songs sound like. I don't listen to it. lot of people love it, and I'm sitting there going, whatever. I don't even know what her sound is. Nor do I care. I don't want to find out. And of course, for some reason or another, saying that makes me the bad guy. And I find that very funny because when you say to somebody, oh, I just don't care, one way or the other, they get offended. Like you've personally attacked them for not liking their taste of music. And I'm like, why are you so personally invested? What do you have, like, did you purchase stock in their album sales or something? Like, why are you so personally involved with it? I never understand it. It makes no sense to me. It's like the people that sit there and they start swooning over celebrities. Why? Like, somebody said to me, they're like, if you could talk to one person, or if you could meet one person in the world, who would it be? And I sat there for a second and I said, I don't know. And I gave a name. And they're like, why? And I said, they look like they're interesting to talk to. That was it. That was the reason. Not because they were a celebrity. I didn't care what their celebrity status was. They could have been infamous. They could have been terrible. Whatever. They looked like they were interesting to talk to. That's why I would meet them. And they're like, well, what would you say? I don't know. Let's sit down and have a conversation, see where it went. Like, like, it's like these people are people. Like, my father met John Denver in a coffee shop. And he didn't swoon over John Denver. He just saw him there and he was enjoying his coffee and he was just like, hey, how you doing? He sat down and he talked to him for a minute, had a cup of coffee with him, had a conversation with him. And everyone was like, dude, you know who that was? He goes, yeah. Yeah, it didn't matter. And like, what do you mean it didn't matter, man? Did you get his autograph? He goes, no. He was like, why would I want it? They go, well, that's John Denver. So? And he's just like, he puts his pants on the same way anyone else does. And it's like, that's exactly it. They're just people, And I have that same nonchalant way of looking at it. And it's like, just sit down and have a chat with them. They're people. You'll find out exactly how human they really are. My father also ran into Haystacks Calhoun, former wrestler, the one that of course, he's deceased now. Big dude, huge mountain of a man. My dad was at in an arena. Him and his I can't remember if it was his friend or his first wife. They went and they went to go watch some wrestling. They knew it was fake, but they're like, you know what? It's going to be a good time. So they go there, and he's like, well, I got to go use the bathroom. So as he's on his way to the restroom, he rounds the corner, goes into the restroom, gets done, comes out of the restroom, rounds the corner again, and runs headlong into a wall. And he's like, I don't remember that wall being there. Well, the wall he ran into was wearing a Clydesdale horseshoe around his neck. And he looked at him, and the guy's like, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you there. He goes, jeez. He's like, obviously you couldn't see me. I came around the corner. He's like, I'm sorry, I ran into you. And he's like, that's fine. And they talked for a little bit before Haystacks went into the bathroom. And he's like, "No, it was good talking to you." And then they just parted ways. So what happens? A couple matches later, uh, my dad's sitting there and he sees Haystacks Calhoun come out and get in the ring, and he goes, "Hey, I ran into him at the bathroom." And they go, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yeah." He's like, "I came out around the corner," and he's like, "I ran right into right into his horseshoe." And my dad was not a short man by any means. He was like 5'11", 6 foot, and he was only chest high to Haystacks. So like when he ran into him, right in his guy's chest. So this guy had to have been 7 foot, 7'1", huge mountain of man. And so yeah, he's like, "Yeah, I ran into him at the bathroom." And they were like, "Well, why didn't you why didn't you stick around and talk to him or get a picture?" He's like, "Oh, I spoke to him for a little bit." He's like, "The guy was going to the bathroom. He needed to go." He's like, "Who am I to stop him stop him from relieving himself in the restroom?" I mean, come on. He made a good point. But he just didn't go gagas over celebrities. And that's exactly it. It's exactly how you have to be. You have to kind of just like not let it become your personality. But that's the problem is you have people today that are like they'll go out, they'll watch a single movie, they'll watch a few movies, and then that becomes their entire personality, and they become completely enamored with these celebrities. And I'm like, your chances of actually running into that person slim to none. And it's like I can understand having a fanciful daydream, sort of like thinking out loud about what it would be like to run into them and meet them. That's one thing. But to sit there and constantly swoon over them, come on. I'll tell you who I would love to meet. Nikola Tesla. That's who I'd like to meet. I think it would be cool. Sit down and talk about a lot of theory. Have him talk to me about like physics and stuff. It'd be kind of cool. Have a nice intellectual discussion. I mean, as it stands now, I have more intellectual discussions with AI than I do people. That's sad. That's very sad. And it's got nothing to do with being alone or being lonely. It's just whenever I pose a question to an AI, there's it aggregates data and feeds back a response that I didn't think about, and I'm like, interesting. That's it. So it's fun to have that conversation. For example, one of my conversations I had with AI one time was about how time travel could be achieved. And I mentioned this in another video, so I'm not going to go too in depth with it. And it sat there and it spat out the fact that I'm potentially right, but at the same time, it's not a feasible go around, so to speak, because my my theory, my way of going about doing it, um, the energy requirements are way too high. Valid. And I thought, okay, is there a way to get those energy requirements down? And so I kind of kept spitballing ideas back and forth. And that was incredibly fun. And the reason it was incredibly fun is because, I grew up in a town where the median IQ is a fire hydrant. So you walk up and you talk to somebody about something rather in depth like time travel, they kind of go, "Was that gonna help me harvest wheat?" I mean, I don't invalidate the fact that they're worthwhile and that they're knowledgeable in their own right, but I sit there and I'm like, well, it's kind of boring because I don't know what they're talking about. I sit there kind of like smiling and nodding politely, like, yes, I'm sure harvesting crops is a great time. Like, I just, there's a disconnect, right? And that's kind of the thing is like, I tell people, nothing feels more isolated than an intellectual, a person with a high IQ being in a town full of people that don't understand. It's very isolating. It's not loneliness. Like it's like to be fair, you don't feel lonely. You just feel like no one gets it. And so you sit there, in a vain attempt to have conversation with people, and it's it gets discouraging. So I spend a lot of time in my own head, you know, having an internal dialogue. When I've told people that I have an internal dialogue, they're like, "You mean a monologue?" And I said, "No, I mean a dialogue." They're like, "How can you have a dialogue? A dialogue's between two people." And I said, "Yes." They're like, "Oh, are you schizophrenic?" No, but I have the ability to remove myself from the equation and view it from another standpoint and say, "Okay, let me play arguing for it and arguing against it. Let me play devil's advocate in addition to being the proponent." It'd be like if somebody was both the prosecution attorney and the defense attorney. Similar. And that way my entire life. Truthfully, I've been able to view everything from both sides of the coin. And much to my own chagrin, my history teacher loved it. But then again, he was also my sociology teacher, and he loved the fact that I could debate against myself. He sat right there and he's just like, "So wait, you can debate against yourself?" I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, give me a topic." So he gave me a softball topic like, gun control, whatever. Now, I don't have a stance on it one way or the other. I'm a constitutional textualist. I look at it from the perspective of what's it say in the Constitution? Well, cannot be infringed. Well, that's pretty cut and dry. There you go. That's how I look at it. That's my personal take on the matter. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like that take. Doesn't matter. Whether you like it or not, irrelevant. I argued with myself on both sides of the equation for, I don't know, 5.5, 6 minutes. And he went, "Okay, okay, I get it. You can argue both sides of a debate." Yep. And so he's like, so what I'll have you do, because we were supposed to do a debate in sociology. And what happened was um, when I told him, I said, I can't debate. And he goes, what do you mean? He's like, everybody can debate. And I said, no, you don't understand. That's what I told him. So I was sitting up there at the head of the class next to him. And everybody's just like, what's this? And he proceeded to tell them, he's like, when one side's getting beat up too hard, he will jump in and help the side that's losing. And so they're like, okay. And I said, I'm going to debate from both sides, essentially. And they're like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. And so my class didn't really like it when that was said. Like it or lump it, that's what happened. After maybe first topic we started talking about, I started debating for, and then were getting, the against was getting beat up. They couldn't think of anything, so I came over to the against side and I started debating again. And then the for side was getting beaten up, so I went over there. And again, my history teacher had to stop me and he goes, no. Stop. Let them do some debate. Please. You're debating yourself. And I'm like, what's that? And that's why I can have an internal dialogue, because I can separate and talk about it from both sides and bounce ideas off myself and postulate question. I think it's postulate. I think it is. Let me double check that. Postulate. To assume or claim as true, existent, or necessary, depending on the depend upon or start from postulate of, to assume as a postulate or axiom, as in logic or mathematics. A hypothesis advanced as an essential presupposition, condition, or premise of a train of reasoning. Yes, postulate was the word I was looking for. I could sit there and postulate an idea, and then I sit there and I'll be my own devil's advocate, and then I will give myself food for thought by saying, well, what if? And then I'm like, okay, yeah, what if? Now, mind you, I don't sit there and do this for like a half an hour slowly. This happens at like lightning speed. And I'll usually jump to a conclusion within seconds, if not within a minute, depending on how heavy the topic is. I'll sit there and I'll just, you'll see me kind of hemming and hawing in my head like this, and then and that's generally the idea I've come up with after I've refined it. It's a gift, and a curse, because doing that also allows me to take any feedback that people give in verbally when they're talking to me. And I'll sit there and I will immediately run a slew of scenarios, like 6 or 7 things. And then I will pare it down and pare it down and pare it down, and I'll get to the one final scenario. And then I'm like, okay, here are your options. Boom, boom, boom. What's the best option? And then I'll pick an option and I'll go. Generally, I'll pick that option, and then how they react, I will start formulating more if scenarios, and it goes from there. But anyway, we got Staff of Kings. We got, I don't say, halfway through. I think it's halfway through. Halfway through? Yeah, because then you have to do the sun and then go into the thing. I'd say almost about 40% of the way through Act 2. The skeletons are working okay. They're a little weak to poison and kind of like apprehensive about Duriel. I'm also kind of apprehensive about Act 3. But if I can get past those, there's plenty of bodies in with Diablo. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. I mean, I could always pick up a wand of like Iron Golem or something. Or by then I could have the staff, or not staff, I could have edge bow and have that going. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion I had. If you have anything to add, or if you have any comments or anything, comment below. I mean, I love getting comments. I really do. And I do read them. I read every single comment. Sometimes I don't comment back because there's nothing I can really comment on. There's other people that'll have a comment and somebody else will have a comment under the comment and they'll be sitting there having a discussion back and forth and I don't step in. It's like, let them mediate it. It's up to them, not me. So definitely leave comments. I love them. I love reading the comments. I love responding to the comments, and it allows me to get feedback. So I'm always for comments, but I never promote the channel like other people do. I find it to be disingenuous, and I think it takes away from the organic nature of things. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.